Kemi Badenoch came out swinging at Prime Minister's questions, landing what many in Westminster are calling a rare gut punch on Keir Starmer. In a session that had all the makings of another routine Labour Tory sparring match, Badenoch caught the Labour leader off guard with a sharp, calculated strike, one that finally put him on the defensive. With her party trailing in the polls and the Conservative leadership desperate for a win, Badenoch zeroed in on Starmer's Achilles heel: his controversial appointment of Lord Hermer as Attorney General. The Tory heavyweight wasted no time laying out Hermer's track record, defending Shamima Begum, representing Gerry Adams, and aiding cases that have seen Britain paying reparations to foreign governments. It was a precision attack designed to undermine Starmer's judgment and paint him as soft on national security. For once, the Labour leader didn't have a smooth deflection ready. His usual lawyerly calm gave way to an uncharacteristic stammer as he struggled to bat away Badenoch's accusation. This was no mere jab, it was a direct hit. Now, check this video.
A family of 6 from Gaza have applied to live in Britain using this scheme, and a judge has now ruled in their favour. This is not what the scheme was designed to do. This decision is completely wrong. It cannot be allowed to stand. Is the government planning to appeal on any points of law? And if so, which ones?
They presided over record high levels of immigration, reached nearly 1 million. So before she lectures us, I think she needs to reflect on her own record and her own record here.
Mr. Speaker, he is the Prime Minister now. The people out there want to know what he is going to do about the situation. He's not listening. He's too busy defending the international human rights law framework. But the Prime Minister literally wrote a book on the European Convention on Human Rights.
It was meant to be a blistering attack. Instead, it turned into a masterclass in self-sabotage. Kemi Badenoch took to Prime Minister's questions, ready to land a knockout blow on Keir Starmer over an incendiary court ruling. A family of Gaza refugees, applying through a scheme meant for Ukrainians, had been granted entry into the UK. It was, in her words, crazy. Yet within moments, it was Badenoch, not Starmer, who looked out of her depth. Faced with her broadside, Starmer barely broke a sweat. "Mr. Speaker, this is tedious," he quipped, puncturing the drama and reducing Badenoch's outrage to an afterthought. Worse still, he didn't contest the ruling. He agreed it was outrageous and assured the House his Home Secretary was already looking to close the loophole. In one swift move, Badenoch's opening salvo was neutralized, leaving her grasping for a second act. And that's where it all went further downhill. Rather than pivoting, Badenoch stubbornly plowed ahead, repeating her attack line as if sheer persistence might turn the tide. It didn't. Starmer, adept at parrying, made her look even weaker with each attempt. Instead of exposing Labour's vulnerabilities, she had unwittingly handed Starmer a rare moment of decisiveness, precisely the opposite of her intent. Only on her 5th attempt did she finally strike a nerve, turning the heat on Starmer's eyebrow, raising appointment of his longtime ally, Lord Hermer, as Attorney General. Badenoch reeled off a damning list of Hermer's past clients: ISIS bride Shamima Begum, Sinn Féin veteran Gerry Adams, and Caribbean nations seeking trillions in reparations from Britain. This was a golden opportunity to cast Starmer as weak on national security and worryingly close to those who would undermine Britain's interests. But just as momentum was shifting, she torpedoed her own case with a clumsy ad on attacking the new Chief Inspector of Borders for allegedly living in Finland and wanting to work from home. A valid point? Perhaps. But an own goal, given that the same official had already been working remotely under Conservative governments for years. Starmer didn't even need to refute her. He simply pointed out the Tories' own hypocrisy, and just like that, Badenoch's strongest argument was lost in the noise. Political journalists and social media observers were brutal in their verdict. "The ritual weekly humiliation of Kemi Badenoch," one user noted. Another quipped, "Like him or not, Starmer remains undefeated in PMQ," perhaps the most damning of all. While Kemi was waging culture war skirmishes, Ed Davey was actually talking about British industry. And that's the real problem here. For all the talk of Badenoch as a rising Tory star, her PMQs performances are not improving. The fundamental role of an opposition leader is to scrutinize the government. The fundamental role of a government's lead interrogator at PMKs is to expose the opposition as unfit for office. Badenoch failed on both fronts. If the Tories are serious about keeping reform at bay and maintaining any semblance of authority ahead of the next election, Badenoch cannot afford another train wreck like this. Mox is not a sideshow. It's where political leaders cement their authority, rally their MPs, and shape the public narrative. Right now, she's doing none of the above. If she wants to lead the Conservative Party into the next election with any credibility, she needs to learn how to land a punch, and more importantly, when to stop swinging. Kemi Badenoch has launched a fierce attack on Keir Starmer over what she branded a crazy court ruling that allowed a Gaza refugee family to enter the UK through a scheme designed for Ukrainians. At a fiery PMKs, Badenoch accused the Labour leader of failing to put Britain's national interests first, demanding he back legal reforms to prevent similar cases in the future. Starmer, for his part, dismissed the ruling as wrong, and insisted his government was already working to close the loophole. But the exchange has reignited the Conservative civil war over the UK's continued membership of the European Convention on Human Rights, ACHR, and put fresh pressure on Badenoch to take a harder stance. The ruling in question saw a family of 6 from Gaza, who had been displaced by an Israeli airstrike, granted entry to Britain under Article 8 of the ACHR, despite initially being rejected by the Home Office. The case has triggered outrage on the Tory benches, with critics warning it could pave the way for mass asylum claims from war zones around the world. Badenoch demanded to know whether Starmer's government would challenge the decision. This is not what the scheme was designed to do. This decision is completely wrong, she told the Commons. Starmer, sensing a political trap, sought to neutralize the attack. I do not agree with the decision, he said. It should be Parliament that makes the rules. He assured MPs that the Home Office was reviewing the legal loophole. But Badenoch pressed on, calling for sweeping new powers to curb the ACHR's influence over UK immigration policy. The Prime Minister literally wrote a book on the ACHR, she fired back. This is a situation where we need to put our national interests before the ACHR. While the Tory leader stopped short of calling for Britain's withdrawal from the convention, she is facing mounting calls from her party's right flank to do exactly that. Senior Conservative figures, including former Brexit Secretary Steve Barclay and ex-Home Secretary Suella Braverman, have argued that the UK cannot fully control its borders while bound by the Strasbourg court. Braverman, never one to mince words, called the ruling a terrible judgment that will have dire consequences. In a pointed attack on the government's current position, she declared, "We have outsourced control of our borders to a foreign court, and it must end. We need to leave the ACHR, scrap the Human Rights Act, and take back control of our laws and borders." Meanwhile, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick piled pressure on Starmer over his choice of Attorney General, Lord Hermer, whom he described as Jeremy Corbyn in a barrister's wig. Jenrick accused Hermer of being blindly wedded to international law and insisted Starmer must choose between standing by his mate and putting Britain's interests first. The ruling itself, delivered by Judge Hugo Norton-Taylor, concluded that the Home Office's refusal to grant asylum does not strike a fair balance, and that the family had a very strong claim indeed. The judgment will fuel fresh debates about judicial overreach and the role of human rights law in shaping UK immigration policy. With the next election looming and Reform UK threatening to siphon off Tory voters, Badenoch is under increasing pressure to sharpen her stance. She previously resisted calls to withdraw from the ACHR but is now being pushed to take a more aggressive position. The question is whether she will hold firm or bow to the growing demands from her party's right. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with our latest videos and stay ahead of the curve on the issues shaping our world. For even more, join our free Telegram group, link in the description, for uncensored, no holds barred discussions on the topics that matter most. Be part of the conversation. Your voice counts.